Yo, yo, what's up? I'm back. I just wanted to go over some possible leaks, or as in the last video I did for stream was focused on melee. So if you're yeah, that's in that video. I'm not gonna be talking about it too much. This is the level 50 tree I had for melee. But now I wanted to kind of go over more options, kind of think through some stuff. I looked at range a good bit. The other two, not as much, so I'm probably gonna look into that later. After we talk about range and kind of see what's available. But I've got some clarification and kind of like some questions answered and whatnot about some of these range stuff in particular. So I just kind of wanted to talk through that, talk through some possible builds and stuff for League Start in 4 days or whatever. So first of all, ranged, I think it's just going to be really strong in general. It'll be probably one of the strongest classes come the end of the game. Obviously, you've got outlier items and stuff that will make some of the other classes incredibly strong too, but just generically speaking, I think range has a lot to offer. So I think when you're starting out, the only issue is the ammo and that kind of thing. So that's something to be keeping in mind is how does the ammo situation look? And kind of are you how quickly are you able to kind of like solve that problem, right? As well as like get any particular weapons you might be interested in using and whatnot. But of course, I mean, range is just historically really strong in Terraria, right? Great bosser for the most part. You can easily kill early bosses and stuff with just some like jester arrows and any bow, really. And of course, you're safe with range. So while you do lack defense on this side of the tree, obviously you're playing from range, so you don't need as much, right? So to start with, I mean, the most obvious thing to do. This is gonna be kind of the level 20 tree. I think the best option for a start is gonna be using grenades. Particularly for this explosives cluster right here. It's just a ton of damage early on. I mean, you're looking at like grenades do a lot of base damage, 60 damage, I think it is. And they do work with these explosive nodes, so it's a little confusing. I have some stuff here regarding like what exactly counts as an explosive, and here is the kind of definitive list. This is what the code is kind of referencing when it talks about all these explosive nodes here. So grenade is on there, right? Everything else is either not relevant for league start scenario because it's like hard mode kind of stuff. So you don't need to worry about that right out the gate, right? It's not going to matter too much day one unless you're incredibly fast. In which case, you can do whatever you want if you're that good. But grenades are on here. And the thing about grenades is within the context of the mod, right, is that they do count as a weapon. So you can actually modify and craft on them with the shards and whatnot. Now, I can show that real quick. But it does work. It does work. And it's kind of interesting how it works, actually. But it does. And yeah, so the grenades will be really strong, right? So you have, this kind of shows that they'll work. And the great thing about grenades is that, like I was saying, they can be modified. So here is a magic grenade, right? So it's magic because it's not a common. So here's like bones, right? These can be modified too. Anything with this like border and this little corner icon is a weapon. So bombs don't count, right? Bombs don't count, but consumable range weapons like these bones, like grenades, they do count, right? and they can be turned magic. As you can see here, I have, this grenade. It has additional chance to shock as its mod, right? And you can actually see that if I separate the stack, it maintains that rarity, right? So this whole stack is rare. And actually, as long as you save one grenade, you will never lose that perfect grenade, because when you buy more, these are common, right? Um, so, but when you click them into a stack, they'll become magic, right? They'll merge with this, and they'll be the same item and have the same mods as the original. So you can just like keep one of these in your chest, just throw it in, and then just use these freely, right? And then when you run out, you just buy more grenades and then throw them onto the item that you crafted, right? Which is incredibly good. That means you can easily try to craft better ones without, rolling over the grenade you have, right? So you can like take this magic grenade, for example, right? And then just roll it. Okay, now it's got, lightning damage conversion, right? For example. And then this one is separate. Oh, no, it actually does. What the heck? Okay, it's not. Okay, you can't do that then. But it actually does change all of them. Okay, that's interesting. I wonder how that works with normal. Let's see. I guess I have to make... Okay, so this is different. Different lightning damage conversion and intelligence. Okay, so you have to craft on a common one then, I guess. And then I guess anything that comes in contact with the stack is like treated as like one item, which is pretty interesting. But either way, I mean, it still stands that you won't lose this item, right? If you run out of grenades, as long as you're keeping one in your storage or whatnot. Good to know. So yeah, grenades obviously they do a lot of damage. At a baseline, right? Obviously, they're not gonna be great against stuff like you know, wall of flesh and stuff like that, right? Like, but and unfortunately, I don't think B nades count as as a explosive, right? So stuff like that, they function a little differently. Yeah. Anyway, so that's that, and then the idea here is that, again, let's reset the tree real quick. You instantly can path up to explosives deal 10% more damage. Now, I wouldn't actually recommend this for a few reasons. One, grenades, they like when you're first, loading into the world, you don't have them, right? You need to get access. You need a demolition to move in, a demolitionist to move in, right? That means you need a house. You need to find bombs. That's not hard, but it can take a little bit. So if you're really wanting to go pure range damage, then you probably just pick up these two for 10%, right? And that'll be 4 points. And then once you get access to grenades, you can come over here. And then what you will need to do, and this will be possible in the update, let's talk about, is that yeah, you will be able to pass through here and grab this. You take no self damage on your own, like from your own explosives. Yeah, you probably want this as well, but so the idea would be to do something like this, right? And then for the mastery, I would probably it's a little hard because I don't know exactly how stuff like this shrapnel functions in game. But it deals 20% of the damage per shard, right? But depending on the number of shards, how those get impacted by projectile stuff, range damage bonuses, and whatnot, I'm not sure. But you could be looking at some shotgun damage on targets and stuff for like bosses. You throw one grenade, it explodes, gets a couple shrapnel shards, they explode for more damage, right? And they all hit the target and do damage, right? Alternatively, you can just go for more damage in larger AoE. That might also just be better. This one, I mean, as long as you can freely swap these without too much of a penalty or a cost, then you could just keep this for you know just clear, right? Just like while you're running around killing stuff when you're not fighting a boss, basically. Um, yeah. So I don't. The wording here is a little bit strange. Like, 'cause I'm assuming what it means is like on kill, like whatever you kill will explode, right, and have an additional explosion, which obviously has, if there's multiple mobs stacked on top of each other, they'll take more damage, right? They'll die, presumably, and you can get some like chaining going on. Maybe it's a little confusing, but I'm assuming that's what it means. Um, Pretty cool, but again, not super useful for like boss damage, so you wouldn't want to use that bosses, right? Because it really only does anything when you're killing something. Right? But yeah, these two are going to be really strong regardless. I mean, I don't know exactly what this damage number is, but no matter what, if it's like 10%, um, it's going to be strong. Also, AoE means more hits on targets depending on what boss you're fighting and whatnot, right? Um, and that's a big AoE increase, right? 40% plus on top of this 15% over here. You could be looking at, multi-hitting Eye of Cthulhu for a ton of damage, right? With your grenades, potentially. Um, so I think for early bossing and stuff, it's going to be incredible. And then, of course, you're going to path up here for these 10%, 10%, and then all this attack speed, right? Because Dex scales your attack speed. Ammo, I don't. Does ammo work on like any consumable weapon? I'm not sure. If it does, then it could be useful. No, it doesn't matter. I think this mastery node will be takeable with fewer connections. Either way, so for this one, got a couple choices. Enemies that are far away is 150 pixel range, which isn't great for grenades, right? Grenades don't go that far. I don't know what this is supposed to be. I'm assuming it's not supposed to be whip range. It's probably supposed to be something else. I'm not sure. Maybe just projectiles have increased range but less speed. I don't know. Either way, this one is going to be the best option, right? Because 10% chance to inflict rooted and deal more damage to rooted enemies, right? So it's just 10% chance. I'm assuming rooted is a debuff. Maybe it applies some CC or something, which would be nice. Regardless, it gives you more damage, which is big, right? And then you probably just click this node for your extra point because there's not really anything else. You don't really care about knockback. In fact, I would say knockback is probably bad because it knocks the enemy away from you. And with grenades, it can be a little annoying because, yeah, as you see here, it's like, well, where the squirrel go? Right, like, if it doesn't die in one hit, then it'll get knocked back, and then it'll be farther away, and your grenades don't travel that far to begin with, right? So, yeah, you don't really want knockback, I think, but um, there is that. So, probably just grab this node, and then alternatively, you can go for just whatever. But the idea is that you grab this, and then you're going to path this way. Well, not that way, but really probably want something like this. Once you get past level 20 and your first 50 points are going to probably look kind of like this. You want to get the rage because rage does work. It's a stacking damage buff, 1% per rage stack. And when you take this mastery, you get increase attack speed and hits apply twice, right? Chance for hits to apply twice, which is incredible damage. Alternatively, you can go for some health scaling or siphon, which gives you a little bit of life steal. Um, but it's only 1% damage, so it's not a ton. It's not going to help you in boss fights, right? Really, I don't think, but and that's really the main place where you're at risk of dying. But it'll, I don't know, whatever. You can test it, but this is going to be insane for damage. Um, and of course, you can always grab max rage stacks. Keep in mind that this effect of applying twice only works at max rage. So the higher your max rage is, the harder it is to be to get this up and running. But obviously, you do want to scale max rage because it scales your crit, it scales your attack speed, it scales your damage, right? The more rage you have, right? And base rage is 20, by the way. So you get 20% um, attack speed, 20% damage, and a lot of crit chance. So it's pretty good. Rage is maybe a little bit too strong. And then you can, not this way, path up here for some defense, right? You're looking at 45 points. You could potentially grab this, you know, or max charges, something like this could be quite good. And again, I believe this one is going to be fewer connections required, but yeah, you can always grab this mastery for more defense and knockback immunity. So you got a lot of good options, and of course, you know, more damage is always available. You path up here, you get flat crit. This node, of course, is, you know, pretty. It's okay. I mean, standing still for 3 seconds is a little bit tricky, but yeah, you can get increased damage there. Um, this stuff obviously doesn't matter for grenades, but the idea is once you're getting to this point, like you're not gonna be playing with grenades anymore. What you're gonna do is you're gonna want to swap, right? So this is a little bit. Maybe I need to connect these. Then I can untake this. Yeah. You're not gonna be playing with explosives anymore. You're probably gonna be swapped to a bow or a gun. Most likely a bow, because bows early on just are much stronger, unless you get, you know, a mini shark or something. But yeah, so you at that point you'd be looking at, you know, doing something like this, right? Potentially taking standing still or attack speed, or yeah, if you're going with bullets, right? Something like that. Bullets could be really good. There is this mastery over here, which has returning bullets. This is actually not 20 seconds, like point something seconds. But again, this is a little awkward because most stuff you're not gonna be able to double hit with anyway. I don't think there's anything that allows you to hit the same enemy twice with returning proj, but maybe because most of the pierce stuff still has a hit limit, right? So it doesn't hit the same enemy more than once. So even if you hit something, the bullet goes through and then returns for another hit. That other hit is not actually going to do damage, I believe. I know that's true for a lot of for like Luminite bullets, for example, which have technically infinite pierce, but they can only hit each enemy once. So yeah, this is a little awkward, but could be good for clear maybe. But yeah, this is probably gonna be the way to go for boss damage at least. 40% stronger. I don't know exactly what that refers to, but presumably more damage. Um, so that's always an option, right? So you're looking at these points. Obviously, you don't necessarily need to take those nodes. What you could also do is go for like haste charges or something else that'll give you more damage. For range, you can also go for poison. I wouldn't go for poison early though. It's gonna be incredibly good once you can get this mastery that gives you enemies take more damage per poison stack. Now I don't know the damage formula with regards to when this take more damage happens. In games like PoE, it happens at the end of the damage conversion, which is incredibly powerful. So like more damage taken is by like from enemies is like insane. But I don't know if that's true here. Either way, it's going to be more damage. So yeah, it'll be really good, but obviously it takes a lot of points because you have to click this whole tree or this whole cluster, and that'll maintain to release, I believe. I don't think this node is getting touched with regards to like how many connections you need because there's only 2 anyway, which is a little unfortunate because you might not necessarily want stuff like faster tick rate or whatever. but or you might not necessarily need it, but you have to take it anyway. So there's that. Yeah. By the way, this is gonna be a much more rambly kind of thing. I'm kind of just talking through my thought process. I'm not really planning to play. Maybe I'll play ranged. Probably at some point I will, and maybe Magic too. But I'm not necessarily planning on it out the gate. So you know. The other thing too is you will want to pick up focus charges, right? So focus charges are incredibly strong because they just give you more damage, right? Um, and here is 3% damage per focus charge, and then max focus charges. So this will just be generically strong. Um, yeah, and again, you won't need to take this block chance node because the other thing that I want to talk about with regards to range is some of the item changes. So the reason why bow and arrow is probably going to be the angle for after explosives. One, bow and arrows are just really strong. Arrows are really easy to come by. You can make some really strong arrows early on too, uh, as opposed to some of the bullet options. I think arrows are generally stronger. Um, Obviously, you typically have less attack speed, but yeah. Anyway, there are quivers now in the game, um, and to be used with ranged class, right? Not sure. We can check here if the yeah, I guess not. All right. Well, the website's start playing right now, but I don't remember exactly what Quiver's mods can be, but it only works with bows, right? Well, maybe it works with guns too, or anything for that matter. But it does work with bows, and it's the only offhand that's going to work with bows. Um, so bows are now considered two-handed, right? So that means you can't use stuff like shields. Right now, you can use, for example, I have a shield on, right? I can put a bow on. I can put bones. I can put grenades. Doesn't matter, right? All with a shield, right? But you won't be able to do this now. You can only use bows with a quiver in your offhand, essentially, right? So yeah, that'll be an important change to take note of because you're not gonna be able to use like a shield or anything else. But obviously, quivers are going to be the best for bows, um, depending on the mods, right? So you get that. That's going to be a damage buff. Going to be pretty strong. Um, there's also this new unique item, uh, which I actually did the sprite for. As long as they implement the one that I submitted. But this one seems kind of nuts, right? Because it's a bow that spawns clones of itself and also fires projectiles from those clones. So you're gonna get some pretty crazy damage depending on the arrow types you use and whatnot. You're gonna be shooting like I don't know what the clone uh, number is, but if it's two, then that's an extra arrow shot. If it's three, that's two extra arrow shots, right? So you can see, especially when combined with something like the holy arrows, right? Is that what they're called? It's gonna be really strong. Right? Because then you're just gonna get like tons of stars raining down, right? Like that'll be really strong. Um, Early on, right? I don't know how early you can get this, you know, whether or not it's like before or after you can get the Dallas Stormbow or something, right? Like, no. Regardless, it's gonna be really strong. It'll be strong with just about any arrow type, right? Um, so there's that as well, which all in all makes Ranger a really strong class for progression The very, very early game might be a little tricky though. Like I said, for with regards to like ammo and whatnot. But once you get enough grenades to, you're gonna be doing ridiculous damage. You've also got a lot of options for post level 50. I'm kind of talking like 50 to 60 because that's about the range at which you're probably gonna be fighting or going like completing hard mode, right? Fighting Moonlord and stuff. Uh, if you're, relatively fast, I'd imagine. Um, Something in that range, right? 60, maybe like 70s and stuff. I don't think you're gonna be like 100, probably, unless you're like super grinding and stuff, but probably not. Um, anyway, so yeah, this kind of point spread, it might look pretty strong. It'll give you a nice mix because, again, you do want defense. Melee side of the tree is quite strong. There's a ton of options for more damage too. So when you're talking about going into that, you know, level 100 territory, you're gonna get stuff like charges. Um, you're gonna get, you know, obviously this cluster, something like that, right? Keep in mind, a lot of these are range projectile generic, so they work with arrows, they work with bullets, they work with grenades, they work with whatever, right? Um, projectile damage, these points here. Um, this one's a little bit funky because you get bouncing ammo, which I don't know how this interacts with stuff that already bounces, like meteorite bullets or something. Um, this one is kind of POL, but honestly, I think there's a lot of stuff because I think that's what quivers do actually. Now that I think about it, is they give you chance not to consume ammo. Suspect no, it's not. Um, well, whatever. Yeah, chance not to consume ammo is, I believe, what they do, and of course they can roll stats too. But I think as an implicit, it's just ammo conservation. Regardless, uh, could be nice to kill well. Otherwise, probably take this one. Um, Shot speed, just faster damage. Uh, and then I'm not sure what this identify does, but presumably it's a good thing for you. Some kind of debuff or something like that. Yeah. Alternatively, you don't necessarily need the life mastery, but it could be useful just to stay alive. Also, there's this mastery here, 30% of life regen, dealt to nearby enemies. I don't know exactly the radius on this. Oh, it says it right here, 150 pixels. So it's only really, it's not good on range, but if stuff gets close to you, then it'll take damage. Probably not the best idea. The siphon or yeah, the siphon is good though, right? Because you just recover HP and stuff. And if this is down to 1, which I don't actually know if it is or not, it is, I think, supposed to be. So you won't even need to take this +2 regen per second. But if you do want life regen, which life regen, the reason why I would consider taking this is because life regen is actually good on range because you're not getting hit constantly. So you have time to actually regen some of your life during fights and things like that, right? Because you're actually being able to stay away and dodge stuff. Um, yeah, so there's that. Probably don't need this. So that's an option. Unfortunately, you can't use a shield, so shield nodes or whatever. This pathing is going to be probably not good because you don't want this aggro. Uh, Although maybe it doesn't really matter, so maybe you do just save yourself point. Bleed is always an option. Ranged and melee hits can inflict bleed, so bleed is always something you can scale into. Now, the bleed mastery options are, on paper, I think they don't look quite as good as the poison ones. So, yeah, something to keep in mind. You can obviously scale both and do both. I don't really know how strong it'll be to do that because arguably just doing that damage up front is going to be better than scaling dot. I feel like in most cases that's the case. Now, obviously poison is going to be good because of this. Uh, Enemies take more damage per stack, which is going to be really strong. So if you can stack a lot of poison with really high attack speed, then all of that's getting converted to more damage, right? But it doesn't hurt to take like a bleed node here. This is just free damage. Well, it's not free, it's 1 point, but 1 point for that might be okay. Probably just something to play around with. And then yeah, you can always scale your attack speed further. You can go for a little bit of extra crit if you want to waste 2 points on that. And then of course you can always grab. The other good thing about Ranger is that you get access to move speed out the gate right next to your start point. So you can always go for permanent feather fall. I don't really like how this feels to play in game if you ever played with like featherfall potions and stuff. So I probably wouldn't do that, but it can be useful. Especially in certain boss arenas and stuff. I think it'll be quite good for traversal. So I would definitely use that during fights, obviously, because the other one doesn't work in combat, but that's definitely an option, right? So yeah, now you're looking at like, yeah, okay, level 8, level 90 almost. This is kind of where it's just a matter of clicking dex nodes at this point, right? Like just getting attack speed and whatnot, maybe some strength too. But yeah, you can always get a minion maybe for some of the minion aura stuff. But it's not really necessary. Or life regen is always an option. Stuff like that. So I think Ranger will be really strong later. Obviously, once you have the points to kind of grab up some defense and not die to everything. But early on, it's still going to be really good in terms of damage. So yeah, that's kind of the idea there. Again, I think the best start for range is going to be probably picking up just a bow early, grabbing these, then swapping over to nades for a while, as long as really that, as long as that's doing damage, right? Because it will fall off, because you really only have grenades as your only viable option. For being honest, for damage, there are. Okay, this is something that I did want to talk about too. I forgot. But in terms of explosives, if you noticed, one thing that does work, if we go back here, is the rocket launchers. So obviously this is post Plantera, which is why I didn't really talk about it much. But when you're talking about like, getting to like, level 60, level 50, stuff like that, then it might be possible. And in that case, they do work with explosions. So yeah, I did want to go over kind of a theoretical rocket launcher tree for potentially you can take this all the way up, probably like well into the end game if you're looking at using the snowball cannon, which does work. If you look here, we get snowman rockets, and more importantly, the mini nuke one. Is going to be the one that doesn't break blocks, and that's going to do a lot of damage. I think it's here. Let's see. So mini nuke does 75 range damage, right? As a projectile, it's got decent AoE for overlapping hits and stuff on multiple enemies, and then of course rocket launchers themselves can be decent, right? Snowman cannon is I think the best option. Unfortunately, where is? I think I gotta go to launchers. Yeah. So unfortunately, celebration Celebration Mark II, Electrosphere. These don't fire explosives. They're technically, those projectiles are not considered explosives for the purpose of the tree scaling. Also, you know, you're not going to get them until much later anyway. At least like Celebration is Moonlord drop, right? Now it'll probably be more damage once you scale it, but you can just run the Snowman Cannon, which is nice because they're homing, right? Um, and then you can go for these explosion nodes. So they will double dip a little bit with range damage because it's also a ranged weapon, right? That explodes. And those do count as explosions, as you saw in the code. So what you'll do there is obviously just take explosions. And again, depending on which one feels better, does more damage. It's a little bit hard to test because we don't know the percentages here. Yeah, probably shrapnel shot is probably going to be good for clear. This will be great for clear. This will be presumably quite strong as well because you get AoE. Really, you can't go wrong. I think all of these mastery options are insanely strong. So yeah, you'll be looking at something like this. Obviously, this is getting changed, I believe. Additional prod is getting removed. It's a little bit too strong, I think. But now this, depending on how this works, could also scale with explosives. I'm not sure the code on that explosive bullet thing passive, but yeah, it could be quite strong. Something like that is probably fine. But you can easily scale crit because you get access to the flat crit over here. You can quite easily path over here if you really need to for extra flat crit. I don't think you'll need to though, because you obviously go for rage. Yeah, Aegis charge is basically the same kind of tree that I was showing earlier. The only difference would be that you keep the explosive cluster, right, at a high level. This speed fall off could be a little funky, but because the snowman cannon missiles are homing, it might not matter, really. It might just delay a little bit of your damage depending on how far away you are. But it should still do quite a lot of damage. You don't necessarily need this, but you can. I mean, if you're taking this, then you're already playing around the standing still mechanics, so and potentially like Shroomite gear or whatever. And then again, yeah, just defense. Grab up defense. Obviously, come up for the focus charges. Bleed is an option, although I don't think it's all that important because the way that bleed functions is the same as poison, where it's a stack-based mechanic. So the more stacks you have, the stronger it gets, and it's not based off your actual like base damage, right? Now, this Bloodbender one could be quite strong for sustain, so that's always something to keep an eye out for. Bleed AoE, don't really need it with explosives. Double bleed stacks, again, not necessary. I think poison will probably be the way to go again with more damage to poison enemies. It's just so strong, generically speaking. Yeah, you could probably definitely come back up here for this. Shot speed, force rage. If you want to get all the rage, you can, because you're going to scale a lot of crit with it. So you're going to be doing huge amounts of damage. Yeah, so that'll be kind of your like level 90-ish almost tree, something like this, right? Yeah, so it'll basically be the same on almost every range build. It's gonna kind of look something similar, I would imagine. If you're trying, unless you're sacrificing all your defense for damage, but even still, you really want to get stuff like focus charges, get stuff like rage. Like you're gonna be coming over here anyway. There is a possibility that you want to go for stuff like fire damage multiplier, and stuff like that. or lightning, depending on the ammo types and like the changes, because they've changed some of the base weapons to deal elemental damage. So that always could be an option. Maybe I shouldn't show it, but I have the info here as to what actually gets converted. But I don't think I think it's mostly melee stuff. So I don't think it really matters. But yeah, it pretty much looks like all melee stuff. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But there are, of course, as you saw with the grenades, right, lightning damage conversion that you can get, right. Um, Again, I don't really think that's ideal if you don't have like uh res pen or anything like that or whatever, because it's just going to be another thing you have to scale that's not super worth the investment, I think. Yeah. So that's about it for range. Of course, this rocket launcher angle will definitely fall off, like end game, post Moonlord kind of stuff. Like probably, well, you'll be able to kill Moonlord with it with a snowball launcher or snowball cannon. Um, but not probably, or snowman cannon. Sorry, not snowball cannon. Probably not a ton of stuff beyond that. Like I don't know that this it probably won't scale like insane. There'll be some way higher option damage options, I think, come the end game. So, but it is something to keep an eye on, especially because you get access to, yeah, just this cluster really, which normally I'd say okay, you know, it's not super important, but like these explosion mastery nodes are really strong, and pretty much all the nodes that you're taking are really nice. This node doesn't matter so much. This node doesn't matter once you get the snowball launcher because it doesn't do damage to you anyway. As far as I'm aware, I'm pretty sure they can't do damage to you. Yeah, snowball. I'm pretty sure snowball cannon doesn't do self damage, but yeah. I mean, AOE is great. More damage, crit chance, the mastery. Really solid, really good options for explosions, and of course, potentially insane damage here, right? With potentially insane clear also. So it's definitely not something to completely forget about. Um, yeah, I think there'll probably be better options though. But yeah, something like this for a level 90 tree is probably what you'd be looking at. It looks a little crazy, but yeah, I think that's probably the way to go. I mean, you can you know, take this, save yourself 2 points here, and then put them somewhere else, obviously. Although probably what you do is you get this master right, something like that. It's obviously 90 points, but I mean, you could just go for Jan or whatever. Um, yeah, so something like that. You really want to really care about making your tree look clean and saving points, then the thing is, dex nodes are not bad to take, right? Because they're all just increased attack speed. But yeah, something like this for end game tree is probably better. Uh, you kind of do have to path this way though, so that you can grab this stuff. Yeah, this is probably okay. Um, yeah, you might want to go this way so you don't take the aggro node. Again, I mean the aggro thing probably only matters when you're talking about like the Shroomite armor stuff. Um, I think because in solo play the aggro doesn't mean much. I think, right? Because I mean you're always you're always getting aggroed anyway. Um, yeah, so something like this is what your level 90 tree is probably going to look like. if you want, if you're like curious about full progression. Obviously, there are going to be tree changes, so some of these pathing parts might change, right? And you won't necessarily need to take all these nodes, right? You don't have to take this one. You won't need to take this one. In certain scenarios, like you won't need to take every single one of these points on the cluster to get what you're looking for from the masteries. And in a lot of cases, especially come end game, depending on scaling with attributes and stuff, like it might be better just to stack a lot of decks, right? And just drop some of these points in these clusters that aren't really doing you much good. Like this 5% ammo conservation is kind of whatever, right? In the grand scheme of things, you don't need it. You'll be able to make up for that with potions or whatever. So yeah, something like that is probably good. And then when it comes to magic, so actually, I'll just talk about summoner real quick. I'm not super keen on summoner. I don't really usually play. I don't play minion builds, to be honest. But summoner does have some cool stuff going on. It's got stuff like reverberation over here, minion auras and stuff like that. I would probably just say if you're gonna start minions, probably just start by going the whip cluster, because this is gonna benefit your damage all the time. It's gonna be good with or without additional minions, right? And yeah, it'll just be generically strong. It'll also allow you to scale crit very nicely. So what I would do is I would probably scale crit. I think crit is going to be incredibly strong on minions because there's just so many good options for it. And what you can do is pair it with something like this, which gives you spell haste, right, for your crits. And depending on the spells you're running, it could be insanely good. Alternatively, there's increased damage. And obviously this scales really well, right? Because you get more damage with each max minion slot. This one is probably going to be the go-to on start, just because it allows your minions to actually move way faster and, yeah, damage more targets quicker, right? Unless you just happen to get a really good spell or skill from like an item or something, and you want to use this, but I don't think your crit's going to be that crazy just yet. So I probably would go with that. Of course, you do want to end up taking this mastery too. One's going to give you, Raging Spirits straight out of PoE. And then this one is potentially going to give you chaos damage. This one is going to be really good at the top end. Keep in mind, there's not a ton of ways to scale chaos damage yet, and there's not a ton of weapons that actually have chaos damage on them at a base. So you would probably need to craft for that or whatever, right? But some of these other ones will be really strong. I'll just say like this is kind of basically what you're looking for in a start for the first like 20-ish levels. It's going to be something that gives you immediate access to increased damage, damage scaling, which this does with your whips and stuff, right? Whip damage, and a lot of crit damage scaling right out the gate. This is probably the only class that you can really, or not class, but this is probably the only setup that you can run crit extremely early, because you just get so much crit chance. 20% against tagged enemies. Presumably this works for both you and your minions, right? Because it just basically gives them 20% like crit weakness kind of a deal, right? Yeah, and then you can obviously scale your crit damage, right? With your minions deal even more damage, right? Enemies hit by your whip take 20% increased critical damage from your minions, right? So not only are you scaling your own crit, but also your minion crit simultaneously. You get stuff like this very early on. Crit, summon damage has a chance to crit, right? So yeah, I mean, and this is like base crit, right? So at least that's the way it reads. It's not increased, right? Stuff like this, is like increased critical hit chance. This just says summon damage has plus 5% chance to crit. So yeah, summon crit is going to be really strong, I think. Early game, you have a lot of options. You can also you have a sentry, you can grab up some of the sentry stuff. Um, yeah, it's basically kind of grabbing this cluster probably first though. Obviously, you won't need to take all of these points for the mastery. That's getting reduced. Maybe I don't know the exact number, but it is getting reduced, so you won't need 5 points for the mastery anymore. Um, yeah. So the nice thing about Summoner is that you do have some built-in kind of like healing and stuff, so you can opt for that. Obviously, you can just take more damage. This is just going to be more damage. Um, So yeah, there's those kind of options. So like level 20 is going to probably look something like this, and it will be level 20 because you won't need to take something like this node here, for example. You could just path here, 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 you'll be good to go. So yeah, you'll be able to get kind of this setup going at level 20. Beyond that, I'm not really gonna speak on it too much because yeah, I'm not playing to play it, and I'm not super familiar with the minion game anyway. So yeah, let's look at magic now because magic is interesting. There's obviously magic is arguably one of the most awkward starts because you need mana, right? You have mana issues. Summoner doesn't have mana issues. Range doesn't have mana issues. Melee doesn't have mana issues really at all, unless you're doing some weird combo stuff. But yeah, obviously range has ammo, but ammo is a lot less annoying, I think, to get going. You can just kind of buy ammo, right, or craft it, um, depending on what you're using. Yeah. So yeah, magic is going to be rough, right? Simply because of that. But what you can do is you can get mana. I mean, you can get mana if you have access to a lightning damage. This is going to probably be the best option to start with. So I would probably go with something like this. Start with magic damage, mana regen, and this one is a little bit interesting because if you're using skills that are strong, then obviously you want to spec into skill stuff, right? Probably Arcane Surge is going to be the way to go. As long as you can get 5 attacks off without burning all your mana, then this will kind of take into effect, giving you damage and regen, right? So that'll be really nice in the early game, I think. And then yeah, crit is going to be really good later once you actually can scale your crit chance a little bit more, right? But yeah, I mean this one is pretty good, but the problem with it, of course, is that you're gonna run into mana issues, right? Because if you're just casting, hoping for a lot of crits, you're not getting many crits. Well, you know, this is just gonna be better, I think, early. Um, this one is good if you've got maybe some. I probably wouldn't take this, but if you've got some nice skills, more than one, obviously you need for that to work. But something like this to start out with, probably gonna be your best bet. Uh, yeah, and then it really depends on what exactly you are using. Are you using like something that channels? Well, then there's this channeling cluster that you're gonna have to work towards. Are you using just skills? Well, then skill cooldown is going to be incredibly impactful, and then these skill nodes are also going to be really good. So if you're looking to use skills for your main source of damage, obviously you're going to want to do that. but obviously generic damage, speed, projectile speed is going to be good. Yeah, right now I don't know if that's going to change, but you need both of these for the mastery. Uh, yeah, so magic missile is probably going to be the way to go. 15% chance, as long as that's actual, like the actual number, that's really strong. Um, but this one is also kind of insane, but it does incur a little bit of cost, right? So yeah, this could really hurt your mana, but as long as your mana is okay, then this is probably really powerful. Because it's only 70% damage, not like 50%, right? Now this is just nice for because it homes. Yeah. Um, but as long as you have no mana issues, then this is probably the best option. Um, so yeah, something like that, and then you're gonna want to get obviously max mana. Probably come over to this cluster, but obviously now you're getting past level 20 and stuff. But yeah, so this is probably your level 20 progression, as long as you have an actual like source of lightning damage, right? Because the problem is you like I guess you could go for fire damage otherwise. Like say you don't have but the problem is like this is gonna be way more points. Now I don't know if this is probably also getting changed. It is. So it'll actually be a little bit closer. It's still gonna be more points though than the lightning cluster. So ideally you get lightning. Um and yeah, this is probably the way to go. Fire is going to be strong because you do have something like this Scorch Chance, which is going to give you Res Pen. So it'll help over something like Lightning, which you don't actually get Pen for, at least not out the gate. You do get Shock, though, and Shock is incredibly powerful because it's also just more damage, right? Um, so, yeah, and I believe by default, all lightning damage can shock, or maybe it's only lightning critical hits. But yeah, I mean this will obviously give you a chance to shock, and then yeah, it's also more point efficient. So those are kind of the league start options. I think in terms of those first like 20, 25 levels and stuff like that. That's what you're looking at. I went a little bit more in depth on range because I've thought a little bit more about it and I'm more inclined to do something like that. I think Magic will always, be really strong on late game once you can actually solve for all your mana problems, which obviously you get a lot of good stuff here: mana regen, reduced cost, max mana. You can stack a ton of max mana. And the thing is, Magic is just going to be insanely good end game, right? Because of scaling options like this, right? 30% max mana, gain 1% of all damage per 25 mana you have. Um, I mean, int gives you mana, right? So if you just click all the int nodes, all the good damage nodes that you need, you're going to be doing a ridiculous amount of damage. It'll be fine. Yeah. So yeah, that's about it. If I think of anything else before the actual launch day, I'll maybe post about it, maybe not. I don't know. Anyway,